What is truth, and how can we attain what Plato calls true knowledge? In the Republic, Plato says our minds move along a spectrum. On one end is knowledge, on the other is ignorance, and in between is opinion, where Plato says most of us live. True knowledge, Plato says, isn't just about memorizing facts, it's about grasping what he calls the forms, the eternal, unchanging realities behind everything in the world around us. To help us understand, Plato gives his famous Allegory of the Cave, where he explains the soul's journey as it rises from the shifting realm of opinion to the unchanging realm of the forms, and how we today can make that same ascension and attain true knowledge. Let's get into it. Plato explains the spectrum of knowledge clearly. As knowledge corresponded to being and ignorance of necessity to not being, for that intermediate between being and not being, there has to be discovered a corresponding intermediate between ignorance and knowledge. This intermediate is what Plato calls opinion, which is temporary and subject to change, whereas true knowledge is eternal and unchanging. To help illustrate the line between knowledge and opinion, Plato gives us a simple example: judging artwork. One person may look at a painting and call it beautiful. Another may say it's ugly. Both are trapped in opinion, judging based on the surface. But a third sees through the image to something deeper, the idea of beauty itself. That person, Plato says, doesn't just have an opinion, they have knowledge, because they recognize the existence of absolute beauty and are able to distinguish the idea from the objects which participate in the idea. They're not fixated on the object, but rather the unchanging essence behind it. In the same way, Plato believed that everything that exists is a copy of a higher form of itself. True knowledge means grasping these forms, not just the copies of it we see in the real world. As he puts it, then those who see the many beautiful and who yet neither see absolute beauty, who see the many just and not absolute justice, and the like, such persons may be said to have opinion but not knowledge. A simple way to understand the difference between a form and its imitation is the example of a circle. You can draw a circle by hand and it might look pretty good, but if you look closely, the line probably wobbles, and not every point is equidistant from the center. Still, you know what a perfect circle is, a shape where every point on the edge is exactly the same distance from the center. For Plato, this definition is what he would call the form of the circle, which is a perfect, unchanging concept. All other circles are simply imperfect copies of this perfect form. Now, why does this matter? The answer is that understanding the forms gives us a fixed standard of judgment that can be applied to all aspects of our lives. In the circle example, because we know what the true form of a circle is, we can then identify and judge other circles by that perfect standard. The same as with justice. If we know true justice, we can hold our laws and institutions up to it and improve them where they fall short. The same with love. If we understand the form of love, we can see which of our relationships are real and which are just illusions. And the same can be said for every kind of thing, because everything has a true form which it is merely a copy of. And once we can look beyond this copy to grasp the unchanging form, Plato says then we obtain true knowledge. But making the leap from seeing copies to understanding the true forms, from having opinion to true knowledge, isn't easy, because it means abstracting unchanging truth from the changing world around us. To help illustrate the process of this abstraction, Plato gives us one of the most powerful metaphors in all of philosophy: the Allegory of the Cave. In this allegory, Plato says to imagine people who have been chained their entire lives in a dark underground cave. Here they have been from childhood, with their legs and necks chained so that they cannot move and can only see before them. A fire is blazing behind them, and between the fire and the prisoners is a raised wall, like a puppet stage. On this wall, shadows appear, cast by the people walking behind the prisoners carrying objects. Since the prisoners can't turn around, all they've seen for their entire lives are the shadows of these objects. And so to them, the truth will be literally nothing but the shadows of the images. So what's going on here? The prisoners represent people who only understand the world through what they can perceive with their senses. And so the cave is the physical world where only copies of the forms exist, not the true forms themselves, which exist outside the cave and which we'll get to in a minute. Behind the prisoners walk opinion makers, people like our teachers, parents, the media, and the objects they carry represent their beliefs. Beliefs about what's good, what's beautiful, what success looks like, and so on. And the prisoners are influenced by these beliefs because they've been trapped in the cave their entire lives. And they can only see the shadows of these objects which in the first place aren't even the truth themselves, they're just being carried by the opinion makers. Eventually, one prisoner is freed by an instructor, and he is reluctantly dragged up a steep and rugged ascent and held fast until he is forced into the presence of the sun himself. When he approaches the light, his eyes will be dazzled, and he will not be able to see anything at all of what are now called realities. Once in the outside world, he will require to grow accustomed to the sight of the upper world, and first he will see the shadows best, next the reflections of men and other objects in the water, and then the objects themselves. Then he will gaze upon the light of the moon and the stars in the spangled heaven. Last of all, he will be able to see the sun, and not mere reflections of him in the water, but he will see him in his own proper place, and not in another, and he will contemplate him as he is. And so to return to the spectrum of knowledge and ignorance, the cave represents the physical world, which is constantly changing and contains only copies of the forms, and hence is the realm of opinion and ignorance. The outside world represents the realm of knowledge, where the true forms exist. The final note Plato gives us in this allegory is that in the world outside the cave, the sun is the highest and final thing the free prisoner comes to understand. Plato says the sun represents the form of the good, the highest of all the forms, which gives meaning, order, and purpose to everything else. To help us understand, Plato gives us another analogy. Most of our senses need only two things to function: a sense organ and the object it perceives. For example, if there's a sound and you have ears, you hear it. If there's a smell and you have a nose, you smell it. But sight is different. Even with healthy eyes and something to look at, a third object is needed to make vision possible: light. And just as light enables us to see, understanding what is good allows us to have knowledge. In the words of Plato, he says, "Whose is that light which makes the eye to see perfectly and the visible to appear? The sun, as you and all mankind say." And the sun does more than just make vision possible. It also gives life. As Plato explains, the sun is not only the author of visibility in all visible things, but of generation and nourishment and growth, though he himself is not generation. In the same way, Plato says the form of the good is like the sun. Just as the sun enables sight and sustains life, the good enables knowledge and gives meaning to everything else. He writes, "The good may be said to be not only the author of knowledge to all things known, but of their being in essence. And yet the good is not essence, but far exceeds essence in dignity and power." In other words, the good is the lens through which we understand everything else. For example, we value justice because we say justice is good. We value beauty because we say beauty is good. Without knowledge of what is good, we wouldn't know why anything matters at all. The question remains, how do we escape the cave? For Plato, the answer is education, but not the kind that just fills our head with facts, the kind that enables us to think for ourselves. Remember that when the prisoner climbs out of the cave, he isn't casually strolling into the sunlight. He's being dragged up a steep and rugged ascent, forced to face the light. Real learning is difficult. It means challenging our beliefs and thinking for ourselves rather than relying on the opinions of those around us. In the last episode, I explained Plato's three-part education: literature, physical training, and science. That's the path out of the cave. And if you're here thinking, questioning, wrestling with these ideas, then Plato would say that you're already on it. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like below and subscribe to continue learning philosophy with me. The goal of this channel is to bring philosophy to the modern world, to help us think more clearly about the world around us, and in the process of doing so, live better lives. I'm so excited to share this and future episodes with you guys, and I hope to see you in the next one.